Have you ever wondered about the cost of suppressing your emotions, of learning to be good, strong, or independent? Society has always taught women that to be loved, they must sacrifice, adjust themselves, and hide the softest, most vulnerable parts within. But the price is steep. They lose the innocent, intuitive, vibrant little girl, the root of their true feminine energy. Carl Jung said that none of this is your fault. It is the consequence of an unhealed inner child, and Jung believed that as long as that little girl remains silent in the unconscious, your feminine energy will remain imprisoned. So, how do you awaken that little girl and liberate your original feminine essence? How do you return to your intuition, gentleness, and receptive strength, instead of merely bracing yourself to survive? Carl Jung left us clues. To be free, you must return. Return to where it all began, where that little girl was left behind in the darkness. In today's video, I will guide you on a journey to heal that little girl. And please stay with me until the end of this video. Who knows, this might not just be content you stumbled upon, but the call you've been waiting to hear for a long time. Number 1. Psychological mechanism, the abandoned child. When a grown woman finds herself perpetually exhausted in relationships, feels lonely even when surrounded by others, or reacts disproportionately to seemingly trivial matters, she often thinks, maybe I'm too sensitive, or maybe I'm truly weak. But Carl Jung pointed out that these emotions are not a flaw. They are echoes from the past, from the little girl inside you who is still screaming, even though no one hears her anymore. In analytical psychology, Jung believed that the human psyche is not a singular entity, but a complex ecosystem comprising the ego, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. Within each person are fragments that have been rejected, forgotten, or deemed weak or unsuitable. One of the most significant fragments in a woman's psyche is the inner child, the little girl who was once hurt. That little girl doesn't disappear. She merely retreats to a dark corner of the mind, a place called the unconscious. There she continues to exist, continues to feel unloved, inadequate, and unsafe. And from that place, she silently controls the emotional life, reactions, and even the choices of the grown woman today. Have you ever tried to act fine when your partner ignores your messages? Tried to hide your hurt when someone criticizes you? Or felt like you couldn't breathe when rejected, even in something as minor as a group meeting? That's not you reacting now. It's the little girl from years ago reenacting her old pain. And because she was never heard, every time a similar situation arises, that wound is carved deeper once more. Jung called this phenomenon the shadow, the part of the psyche that holds what we don't want to see, what we're not allowed to express. For women, the inner little girl often becomes part of this shadow. She carries the fear of abandonment, the sense of being invisible, and the belief that her worth lies only in pleasing others. These beliefs form early, when a little girl's emotions are ignored by her parents, when she's scolded for crying, when she's compared to others, or simply when she's not accepted for who she truly is. You might think these are trivial matters, but a child's psyche cannot reason clearly like an adult's. When rejected, that little girl doesn't understand that the issue lies with her parents or society. She believes, there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough to be loved. And from there, a psychological map is formed. Please others to be loved, or be yourself and be abandoned. This is the first unconscious mechanism that causes many women to lose themselves from a very young age. This pain doesn't vanish. It transforms into a hidden script for living, and you keep attracting relationships that repeat the old wounds. You fall in love with someone cold, just like the distant father you once had. You work under a boss who constantly criticizes you, making you feel never good enough, just like when your mother compared you to others as a child. This is no coincidence. Jung called it unconscious repetition, compulsion, where your mind tries to recreate the old wound, hoping this time it will be healed. But without awareness, you only relive the pain, unable to break free from it. The danger is that you believe this is fate, that you were born unlucky in love, that work always requires you to tough it up. But no, this is not destiny. This is an unresolved past. Jung stated clearly, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Adding to this is the role of the ego, the self. The ego is the part of the mind that helps us adapt to life, build an image, and accomplish goals. But when the inner child is deeply wounded, the ego develops as an overprotective armor. You become a strong, successful, independent woman, reliant on no one. But deep inside, you're utterly exhausted from constantly bracing yourself to hide the fragility of the little girl from long ago. Imagine a 35-year-old woman, financially independent, with a respected position. But in love, she falls into an emotional overdrive state. When loved, she panics, fearing loss. When abandoned, she's paralyzed, racked with pain, as if the world has collapsed. She may excel at presentations, lead projects, and negotiate with high-level executives, but she cannot honestly express her feelings to the person she loves. Because deep down, she isn't loving as a grown woman, she's loving as a little girl searching for the father who never held her with a gentle gaze. Do you see yourself in this story? If so, please leave a comment below. Your sharing might be a gentle wake-up call for someone else silently struggling to be loved. This psychological pattern is incredibly common, yet few recognize it. Because society doesn't teach women to connect with their inner world, it only teaches them to be good enough to be accepted. But the harder you try to be loved, the further you drift from yourself. Jung believed, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. This is why the little girl in your unconscious must be brought back into the light, not to control you, but so you can hear your true voice. That's when you start to realize, oh, I react this way because I was silenced as a child. Oh, I try so hard because I once thought I wasn't enough. And when the light of awareness touches the darkest places, that little girl begins to soften. This doesn't happen in a single day. But the first time you acknowledge, there's a part of me that's hurting, that's the moment the unconscious stops controlling you, and you begin to reclaim the lead in your own life. The essence of healing is not about erasing the past, but making peace with it. And the first step is to look at that abandoned little girl with all the honesty and gentleness you can muster. Because if you don't, there will always be a part of you sitting there, waiting to be seen, heard, and loved, while you stay busy building an ideal life on the outside, yet feel inexplicably empty inside. The moment you start listening to that little girl, when you dare to touch the most fragile part of your inner world, another truth will emerge. That these wounds not only hurt you in relationships, but cause you to lose something even deeper: your connection to your primal feminine essence. Number 2, the blocked feminine energy. No one is born disconnected from their feminine essence. It is programmed into the soul, like a lighthouse guiding the way, like the wellspring of creativity, intuition, gentleness, receptivity, and connection. But over time, this energy is gradually stifled by society's harsh demands, by the roles women are forced to play: strong but not weak, beautiful but not too striking, successful but not too confident. Under this pressure, feminine energy doesn't vanish, it merely retreats, making way for the protective layers formed from unhealed wounds. Carl Jung called this a process of detachment from the archetypal self, where the deepest part of your soul is locked away, waiting to be awakened. Femininity is a spiritual state. Jung defined it as the anima, the profound, gentle inner energy that connects to emotions, intuition, and the subconscious. But for many women, the anima is shrouded by fear: fear of judgment, fear of being hurt, fear of being seen as weak. And when the inner little girl is wounded, this feminine essence is the first thing to be sealed off. A girl who was scolded for crying too much, criticized for being too delicate, or mocked for dreaming, grows up learning to suppress her emotions, hide her gentleness, and feel safe only when she becomes steady, rational, controlled. But what is the cost? A fracture from the very source of creativity, from the natural flow of her soul. Feminine energy is not about appearance or gender. It is a sacred power that lives within us all. It is the part of your soul that receives love, flows with life, rather than forcing it. It is the intuitive whisper that says, "Slow down, you are safe." It is playfulness, sensuality, vulnerability, and the beauty of simply being. But for many women, this energy is suppressed early on. Perhaps you were taught that emotions are messy, that softness is weakness, that your desires or too muchness are unacceptable. Perhaps you grew up in a world that praises achievement and logic while shaming intuition and sensitivity. And so, the inner child, who once danced freely, dreamed boldly, and cried without shame, learned to shrink, to hide her essence, trading joy for performance, wearing strength like armor, without realizing it was slowly burying her truth. Jung taught that the archetype of the inner child is the root of our freedom, creativity, and emotional vitality. So, if you find it hard to relax, to enjoy pleasure without guilt, or to express your femininity without fear, you are not off track. You are simply blocked. You've been trying to survive in a world that demands you abandon yourself. And now is the time to return, to heal that inner little girl and let her guide you back to the woman you were always meant to be. Imagine a small stream flowing through a quiet valley. At first, it is cool, fluid, winding around rocks and trees. It flows by instinct because it is itself. But one day, the stream encounters a massive boulder. It doesn't know why the boulder is there, but it knows that to keep existing, it must change its course. So it learns to flow through cracks, to slip through narrow gaps, to navigate skillfully. It begins to believe that if it flows too strongly, more obstacles will appear. A woman's feminine energy is like that stream, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce, but naturally uncontrolled. Yet she has imposed too many rules upon herself, too many outdated beliefs that say, "I am only worthy when I make others happy." And like the blocked stream, the deepest part of her no longer reaches the light. However, for the stream to flow naturally again, a woman must feel safe in her body, her heart, and her emotions. An inner child who was never loved unconditionally cannot feel safe opening her heart. So, instead of receiving love, the grown woman becomes suspicious, controlling, and rationalizing everything. She builds fortresses to protect herself, unaware that these very walls imprison her deepest feminine essence. Feminine energy doesn't function through effort. It is awakened through surrender, presence, and trust in the natural flow of life. But a woman carrying the fear of being hurt cannot let go. She is always on guard, always analyzing, always needing to be certain before giving her trust. And in that moment, she falls away from her feminine essence, not because she lacks it, but because she was once taught that living in it was dangerous. Recall the last time you didn't dare express your true emotions for fear of being dismissed, or when you chose silence over sharing your needs for fear of rejection. That was the moment your anima, your feminine energy, was stifled once more. And the tragedy is that you think you've grown up, become wiser, when in reality, you're repeating a survival pattern from childhood, when your inner child had to learn to suppress herself to survive. Carl Jung didn't see restoring femininity as a moral lesson, but as a spiritual task, reconnecting with your original soul through acceptance, compassion, and integration of the shadow. It's when you dare to sit with the parts of yourself labeled weak, useless, or too emotional and say, "I see you. You have a right to exist. You are me." And when you do this, something miraculous happens. You begin to change from within. You begin to feel. You begin to create. You begin to love without fear of loss. You no longer have to push to be recognized. You shine naturally from a source that never runs dry, the feminine essence that has been dormant within you for too long. From that moment, a deeper journey begins, not one of becoming anything, but of returning. Number 3, the process of individuation. Carl Jung never believed that the goal of life was to become the best version of yourself, as modern society often teaches. He wasn't concerned with perfection, nor did he encourage forcing oneself into some moral standard. For Jung, the ultimate goal of spiritual development was to become whole, not better. And the process leading to this wholeness is called individuation, or more accurately, the journey of returning to your true self. Individuation is not about adding something new. It is about stripping away everything that does not belong to you. The borrowed beliefs, the roles learned from the outside, the protective layers you created to survive. It is about facing your shadow, those parts of yourself you once rejected, and embracing them as part of your existence. It is when the inner little girl, the feminine essence once locked away, and the seemingly insignificant memories begin to be brought into the light of consciousness. Individuation is not a vision of dazzling light, but a journey downward and inward to the roots, confronting wounds, making peace with the past, and learning to live with your entire being. The strong and the weak, the rational and the intuitive, the dark and the light. Only when you integrate all these parts do you step out of a fragmented life where you constantly strive to be someone else, into a life that is truly authentic, autonomous, and profound. A woman who embarked on this journey once shared, "I lived as if I were wearing a mask for 30 years. I always behaved the way others expected, always smiled even when I was shattered inside. But when I began to return to the little girl within me, to the parts I was once ashamed of, I realized I had never truly lived a single day. And from that moment, I could never go back." The process of individuation is far from easy. There will be times when you feel lost, no longer belonging to the old places but not yet knowing who you are in the new world. But this is a good sign. Jung called it the symbolic death, the death of the old self to make way for the true self to be born. And from that very disorientation, you begin to feel a profound freedom, no longer needing to be accepted because you have finally accepted yourself. And that is what Jung emphasized. You were not born to become an ideal person. You were born to become yourself. Whole, full of contradictions, beautiful in a way no one else can define. The journey of individuation is the map that leads you home, where you no longer run from yourself. Healing the inner child is not just a practice, it is a homecoming, a courageous and radical act of self-love. It means that every unhealed wound, every buried emotion, every suppressed need will continue to echo in your relationships, choices, and sense of self-worth until you face them with compassion. You don't need to learn anything more. You only need to peel away the layers created to hide the pain of the little girl inside, not by reading another self-help book or practicing a few more skills, but by returning to where it all began. Meeting the little girl within you who once carried your full essence before the world began to silence her. Number 4. The journey of connecting with the inner child. Exercise 1. Recognizing the inner child. The first and gentlest step in this healing journey is learning to recognize your inner child, not as an abstract concept, but as a living, breathing part of you that still feels, still hopes, and still longs for love. Begin by finding a childhood photo of yourself, one that stirs something within you. Hold the photo in your hands, look at that small face, gaze into those eyes. What do you see? Innocence, curiosity, fear, longing, or joy? Take a moment to let the emotions arise without judgment. Gently ask yourself, what did this little girl dream of? What did she believe was possible? What made her laugh so freely? And more painfully, what made her cry alone in the dark? Then, with compassion, write a letter to that little girl, not from the perspective of an adult who knows better, but as someone who finally sees her. Tell her the words she longed to hear. You are loved. You are enough. I am so proud of you. This act of writing is not merely symbolic. It is sacred. It is how you begin to rebuild the bridge between the person you are now and the child still waiting to be acknowledged, embraced, and understood. Exercise 2. Listening to her needs. Many of our deepest wounds stem from childhood needs that went unmet, love that wasn't given, safety that wasn't provided, or understanding that never came. These unmet needs don't simply vanish with time. They linger in our nervous system, in our behaviors, in our relationships, whispering, "See me, don't abandon me again." To begin healing these old echoes, find a quiet place, close your eyes, place a hand on your heart, and breathe deeply. Let the world fade away for a moment. Then gently invite your inner child to step forward. Picture her as vividly as you can. What is she wearing? What does she look like? Is she shy, angry, silent, or sad? When she appears, ask her with utmost sincerity, "What do you need from me right now?" Then listen. Don't rush. Don't censor what comes. You might hear a whisper, a sob, a forgotten memory. You might feel tears well up before words form. Whatever arises, write it down. Let it flow. This is not about fixing her, but about making her feel heard for the first time. This exercise doesn't just soften your heart. It slowly restores the most sacred relationship you've ever had, the one with yourself. As you learn to meet your own needs with love and gentleness, something beautiful happens. You begin to reclaim the innocence, wisdom, and radiant essence that was never truly lost, only hidden beneath years of trying to become who you thought the world needed you to be. Exercise 3. Becoming your mother. If you grew up without the love, validation, or emotional safety you needed, that wound doesn't simply disappear. It lives deep in your unconscious, shaping your reactions and your frequent silences. But here is the truth. You can become the parent your inner child always longed for. Start by listening to your inner dialogue. Reflect on how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake or fall short of expectations. Is your inner voice gentle, or is it cold, harsh, and unforgiving? Would you speak that way to a frightened little girl? Someone fragile and vulnerable? Probably not. So why do we speak to ourselves this way? It's time to rewrite that dialogue. It's time to offer that kindness to yourself. Picture your inner child standing before you, perhaps clutching an old stuffed animal, perhaps with tear-filled eyes, perhaps just waiting to be heard. Look into her eyes and say the words she's waited a lifetime to hear. You are so loved. You matter. You don't need to earn rest. You are not too much. You are just right. As you begin to treat yourself with the compassion and tenderness of a loving mother, something miraculous happens. You stop seeking validation from the outside. You stop begging others for what you can finally give yourself. This is conscious nurturing. It's not about pretending the past wasn't painful, but about meeting yourself with compassion right now. It's about becoming the safe, nurturing, steady presence your younger self needed, but never had. And when you commit to nurturing yourself with kindness instead of criticism, with patience instead of punishment, you begin to soften, you begin to heal, and you begin to experience a kind of peace that comes only from feeling fully accepted by yourself. Exercise 4. Honoring your feminine essence. To truly honor your feminine energy, you must slow down and turn inward. Ask yourself, what would bring me joy right now? Not what is expected, not what is productive, not what pleases others, but what would nourish your soul. Carve out a sacred moment in your day just for you. This is the time to come alive again. It might be letting your bare feet dance freely in the living room to a song that awakens something wild in you. It might be painting without a plan, letting emotions spill onto the canvas. It might be sitting quietly with a warm cup of tea, feeling the silent strength of simply being. Do something that awakens the softness and creativity the world tried to tame in you. And above all, let go of the need to control everything. Femininity cannot bloom in rigidity. It thrives in trust. Trust in your body, your intuition, your timing, and your worth. As you begin to honor your feminine essence, something miraculous happens. You return to a version of yourself that is more alive, more magnetic, and more you than ever before. Because the truth is, you don't need to become anything. You just need to remember who you were before the world told you to forget. Exercise 5. Breaking the wound of rejection. One of the deepest wounds we carry, often hidden behind perfectionism, people-pleasing, or emotional distance, is the fear of rejection. And this fear rarely begins in adulthood. It often takes root in childhood, when we were taught, directly or indirectly, that love is conditional. Perhaps you were only praised when you were well-behaved, quiet, or accomplished. Perhaps your tears were met with indifference. Perhaps your true emotions were dismissed as too sensitive. Over time, you began to associate authenticity with rejection. You learned that to be accepted, you had to edit yourself, your voice, your feelings, and your true self. But here is the most powerful truth. You don't need to change who you are to be loved. You never did. If you're still watching this video and finding these lessons helpful, please comment the number 1 below to let me know you're still following along with me. Now, take a moment to recall a memory where you felt deeply rejected by parents, friends, a partner, or even society. Let that memory surface, then gently ask yourself, did that rejection truly define my worth? And answer from your soul, no, I am worthy of love simply because I exist. Because rejection is not always about you. Often, it is a mirror reflecting someone else's pain, fear, or limitations. Their inability to love you has nothing to do with your lovability. Healing begins when you stop internalizing the wounds others project onto you. It begins when you stop running from the fear of not being enough and instead return to the sacred truth that you have always been enough. Exercise 6. Reconnecting with feminine energy through the inner child. To unlock your feminine energy, you must return to the most innocent, wild parts of yourself, the child who felt connected to herself without shame. Think back. Was there a moment when you felt completely free, uninhibited, bursting with joy? Perhaps you were spinning in the backyard, painting with wild colors, singing at the top of your lungs, or lying on the grass, staring at the sky. Close your eyes and recall that moment. Where were you? What were you doing? Who were you before the world demanded you become anything else? Then ask yourself, which parts of my childhood made me feel most alive, most like me? Make a list. Let it flow from your heart. Skipping rope, dancing in the kitchen, writing poetry, building forts, dressing up, and imagining worlds. Now choose one thing from that list and do it this week. No excuses, no judgment. Recreate the space for your inner child to breathe again. Because the truth is, those playful, soulful activities aren't childish. They are medicine. They are the natural expression of your feminine energy before life told you to tone it down. As you reconnect with these lost pieces of yourself, you begin to awaken the woman you were born to be, radiant, intuitive, magnetic, and free. Exercise 7. Allowing yourself to be without fear of judgment. So many of us were taught to perform, rather than simply be, to be agreeable, to hide joy when it's too big, hide tears when they're too messy, and hide truth when it's too much. Over time, we learn to keep our radiance behind a mask, fearing judgment more than craving freedom. But what if you could begin to shed that fear? Start by identifying one area of your life where you feel suppressed, where your soul longs to express itself, but your mind whispers, be careful. Perhaps you want to dance in the kitchen, speak up in a meeting, wear something bold, or write what you truly feel, but something holds you back. Gently ask yourself, where does this fear come from? Who taught me it's unsafe to be myself? Who told me I must shrink to be accepted? Then do one small thing to challenge that belief. Dance even if your moves are clumsy. Cry even if no one understands why. Laugh loudly. Write without deleting. Speak what's in your heart without trying to package it neatly. Because when you allow yourself to be, you reconnect with the little girl who was unapologetically free, who sang off-key without shame, who played dress-up without caring what others thought. She didn't need approval to shine. She just was. Let her guide you home. Exercise 8. Practicing joy without guilt. Most of us carry an invisible burden, the belief that joy must be earned, that pleasure is selfish, that rest or enjoyment must be justified by productivity. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that feeling good without doing enough is lazy or indulgent. That belief isn't yours. It's a legacy, a conditioning, an outdated relic. But your soul doesn't thrive in deprivation. It blossoms in joy. Today, I invite you to do something simple yet radical. Choose joy. Make a list, a real list, of things that bring you joy but serve no practical or productive purpose. Things that make you feel soft, silly, inspired, and alive. Perhaps it's painting without a goal, singing in the shower, soaking in a bubble bath, dancing to a favorite song, or curling up with a book that makes your heart ache in the best way. Then choose one thing and do it. Not because it's useful, but because you deserve to feel good. And when guilt arises, as it may, pause, breathe, place a hand on your heart, and gently remind yourself, I am worthy of enjoying life without justification. This simple act, embracing joy without guilt, begins to unravel decades of suppression. It tells your inner child, you are safe now. You are allowed to play. You are allowed to feel good. Because healing isn't just about unearthing pain. It's about reclaiming your right to delight in being alive. Exercise 9. Building confidence. The next time you feel that familiar self-doubt rising, whether before a tough conversation, a creative risk, or a vulnerable act, pause. Ask yourself, if my inner child were here right now, what would I say to make her feel safe? Say those words aloud to yourself, with love. You might whisper, I'm right here with you, or it's okay to be scared, you can still show up, or your voice matters. Keep going. Each time you speak gently to yourself in moments of fear, you reframe the belief that you must be perfect to be worthy. You plant seeds of confidence, and slowly, you rise. Because the truth is, your confidence doesn't come from never falling, but from knowing you can get up, again and again, without abandoning yourself. Confidence also comes from affirming your worth. Find a childhood photo of yourself, one where you look pure, unfiltered by the world's expectations. Hold it gently. Look at that little girl. Now tell her, loudly if you can, you are enough exactly as you are. You don't need to earn love. You are worthy of kindness, safety, and joy. Feel the truth of those words. Let them touch the parts of you that never heard them when it mattered most. Repeat them often if needed. Let them become the foundation on which the grown you stands. Ultimately, the journey back to your feminine essence is not one of becoming, but of returning. Remember that you were once a vibrant, emotional, authentic, light-filled little girl. Remember that vulnerability is not weakness, but a form of courage. Remember that your intuition was once your compass, needing no reason to be trusted. And remember that love, creativity, joy, all that makes up the beauty of a feminine soul, have always been within you, never lost. Jung didn't write for modern women, but his philosophy is a beacon illuminating the silent pain millions carry, living disconnected from themselves. And healing, whether through the lens of psychology, spirituality, or the art of living, is ultimately one act: stopping the betrayal of yourself. Stop hiding your pain. Stopping growing up in a way that leaves the purest part of you behind. When you sit with that child, when you let her cry, sing, dream, and love unconditionally, you're not just nurturing a memory, you're unlocking the very source of energy buried for too long, the sacred, instinctual, whole, feminine essence.